Hey everybody, welcome to Shop Class 101, and today we're going to replace the water pump in an Evinrude outboard. Let's get to it. Alright, first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the transom saver, so we're going to tip up on the tilt. And then we're going to remove the lower unit brace. Alright, now we're going to lower the engine back down and take the cover off. Cut. Next, we're going to shift this into reverse using the controls where the captain sits. Next, we're going to remove the bolt that holds the coupler on for the shaft down in here. That little guy right there. Next, we're going to locate the trim tab and note its position. I'm going to mark it here so I know that I can return the trim tab to the same position when I put it back together. Then we're going to remove the bolt that holds the trim tab in. Alright, with that trim tab removed, we've gained access to one bolt with a 9/16 head and one bolt with a 5/8 head, both of which we're going to spin out now. Next, we're going to remove the 4 bolts that hold the lower unit up onto the upper case here. We're going to use, for this one, a 9/16 ratcheting wrench, and we'll remove this side and then that side, and then we'll carefully try and guide this thing out of here. So it's important to make sure that you have room to remove the lower unit against the ground. So you may need to trim this thing further up than you've had it. As we remove this last bolt, we want to make sure that the lower unit does not slip out on its own and fall onto the deck. Alright, so now we're going to wiggle this thing out, and we should bring the rod and the water pump tube with us. All right, next we're going to remove the water pump impeller, and be careful not to lose the key that splines it to the shaft. Here's the little key I was talking about. Cut. Next, if there's an O-ring in here, we want to remove it. In my case, I can't get to an O-ring from here, so we'll need to just remove the stainless steel water pump base plate. Next, we're going to use some brake parts cleaner on a rag to help clean up this area so that our new gasket will seal very well. Next, we're going to apply a little bit of adhesive into the O-ring groove here in the housing. We're going to put a dab at each one of the four stanchions or pegs in here. We're going to make sure we don't get any adhesive in this air bleed groove right here. Next, we're going to coat the outside of this with gasket adhesive so it helps retain it inside the pump housing. So here I have greased up my water tube housing and I've glued on the grommet. We're preparing to install the screws to hold the water tube housing on. First, we're going to coat those with a light marine grease to prevent corrosion. Next, I'm going to put some adhesive on the O-ring and install the O-ring into the groove. Next, we're going to coat the inside of this housing with a little bit of marine grease, a light coat, to help lubricate the impeller. With the groove for the key facing up, we're going to install the impeller with a counterclockwise turn. This is easier said than done sometimes. So here I've got the water pump impeller key and an O-ring with a slight amount of marine grease slid down the shaft. I'm going to put the impeller key in, leading edge facing towards the right as it's driven clockwise, and I'm going to use this O-ring over the key to help hold it in place for me for when I install the water pump impeller housing. Now that I've got the water pump housing installed, I'm going to install and tighten the bolts. They need a final torque of 64 to 80 inch-pounds. Now that I've got the water pump housing pushed down over the shaft, I'm going to install the bolts. The bolts get torqued down to about 75 inch-pounds. We're going to work in a crisscross pattern as we tighten them up. So next we're going to remove the grommet on this shaft and install the new one. Now we're going to take the lower unit and we're going to try to install it back up into the housing on the first try. Alright, so you're going to see that I went and got some help. I put a ratchet strap around the lower unit around the power head, and this is going to help me hold it as I align the shift shaft and the splines for the drive shaft as I finish installing it. We'll cut back to when I'm finally torquing these bolts down. So here we are back at it, tightening these bolts down for the last time. I managed to line up the shift shaft rod into its holder, got the bolt started up there. We're going to put the final tighten on these lower unit bolts here. Here we're going to install the trim tab and trim tab bolt, making sure to align our mark that we made previously. Now I'm going to install and tighten the shift shaft retaining bolt right in here. And here we're going to reinstall the cover or the cowling over the top of the unit, and we're going to go outside and test it. So here we go. We are going to try and test this water pump, make sure that it puts water out through the tattletale. Alright, so there you have it, a successful water pump replacement on an Evinrude 140 horse two-stroke. Thanks for watching.